Back in 2006, the PC landscape was vastly different from today. And as a budget builder, you were often looking for the next best deal, even buying a generation from before. But before we take a look at what PC hardware was available for back then, let's take a look at the overall PC hardware ecosystem for 06. To really appreciate the choices a budget builder had back in 2006, we need to look at what was driving competition. So let's take a look at the key companies that were involved in the hardware space for back in 06. First up, let's discuss CPUs. In 2006, the main battle was between Intel's Core 2 Duo line and AMD's Athlon 64X2s. For budget builders, the focus was usually though on slightly older options or price-friendly processors that still performed well. This meant processors like the Intel Celeron and the AMD Sempron. These were popular choices back then, offering acceptable performance at a good price, especially amongst budget PC builds. To put it in perspective though, for the real retro heads, we're mainly talking CPU socket 478 and 775 for Intel builds, and CPU socket 754, 939 and AM2 for AMD builds. As for AMD's AM2 socket, this was the new kid on the block back in 06. Focusing on Intel, their flagship processors were the expensive Core 2 Duos and even more expensive Core 2 Extreme options. But if you were a budget PC gamer or budget builder in those days, you would have most likely been looking at using processors from Intel's Celeron line. Those processors were the go-to for budget builds, providing the necessary power without breaking the bank. Now, looking at AMD, the Sempron was their key competitor to Intel Celeron. These two were also budget-friendly processors, offering decent performance for their price. Now let's take a look at GPUs, or what they called them back then, video cards. The main names you needed to know were Nvidia and ATI, with intense competition between their GeForce and Radeon lines at the time. First, let's introduce ATI as Nvidia's main rival. Their Radeon lines were crucial to budget PC gamers back then, and models from the Radeon X1300 and X1600 lines provided good performance for those counting pennies in 2005 and 2006. As for Nvidia, they also offered budget options like the GeForce 7200GS, 7300GS and GT. As for the 7200GS, it was only really available through OEM systems and workstations in 2006, like in the Dell Dimension 510 and 521, and only readily became available to the consumer in early 2007. But there were some listings in 2006 where they were being pulled out of some of these OEMs and workstations, and then listed on sites like eBay. Now, as far as who was the bigger fish in the pond back then, believe it or not, it was actually ATI when it came to discrete GPUs as far as market share was concerned. With that landscape in place, let's take a look at the specific GPU models and pricing, starting with Nvidia for 2006. As for their high-end options, this included models like the 7900 GT, the Foster 7900 GTX, and the various 7950 models. For those wanting moderate performance but on a budget, Nvidia had options like the 7600 GT and 7600GS. But if you were looking for the classic budget-friendly options, you would have been looking at GPUs from their 7200 and 7300 line. As far as pricing was concerned for the lower-end GPUs like the 7200GS, 7300 GT and GS, these range between $50 to $150. Moving back to processors, for the budget Celerons from Intel back in 2006, specifically models like the Celeron D352 and Celeron D356 for socket 775, were part of Intel's CDML generation of processors, and these were typically priced around $60 to $90. As for AMD, their budget Sempron processors from back in 2006, specifically models for the AM2 socket, included models like the Sempron 2800 Plus, 3000 Plus, and 3200 Plus, which typically range between $50 to $100 in price. Oh, welcome back. Talking about massive things, AMD made a bombshell announcement in 2006. The acquisition of ATI for $5.4 billion Anyway, they basically wanted ATI's graphics technology so they could integrate it with their processors to sort of create the first APU, if you want to call it that. Well, what they actually did call it was the Fusion Initiative. While AMD was focused on the merger, Intel was making waves of its own, with the Core 2 Duo regaining performance dominance over AMD. Meanwhile, Nvidia released the legendary G80, the graphics processor that powered the 8800 series, and introduced the unified shader architecture, which made programming much easier and set the standard for future graphics cards. As for PC gaming in 2006, it wasn't just about graphics that year, but also about pushing the limits for things like physics, complex worlds, and so on. This trend drove developers to create games like The Elder Scrolls Oblivion, with its expansive world, and other games like Company of Heroes with its advanced physics. And for budget PC gamers, that meant tweaking settings and configurations to balance performance and visuals, such as lowering things like screen resolution, turning down texture quality settings, and turning off effects like shadows. To put that in context, minimum requirements for games like The Elder Scrolls Oblivion meant having a processor running at around 2 GHz, 512 MB of system RAM, and a graphics card with at least 128 MB of video RAM. Talking of system requirements, let's take a look at the budget system I put together for 2006. Starting with the motherboard, we decided to go with Intel's 775 socket, which resulted with us purchasing the Gigabyte GA945GC-MX-S2. A semi-budget motherboard which was part of Gigabyte's GA945GC series, which originally launched in the later half of 2006. This specific version of the series was priced at around $50 to $70. I did manage to find an original listing for early 2007 where the reviewer mentioned paying $56 for this motherboard at the time. This motherboard supports Intel's Core 2 Duo line of processors along with the Pentium D and Celeron D processors. It also supports up to 4 gigs of DDR2 memory, running in dual channel up to 667 MHz. It also offers full 7.1 surround sound with 6 physical audio jacks. On top of all of that, it also comes with Gigabit Ethernet and supports PCI Express graphics cards. As for storage, it comes with 4 SATA 2 ports, 1 IDE port, a single floppy port, and it also came with 4 USB ports along with 2 internal USB headers on the motherboard itself, offering an additional 4 USB ports if used. Moving on to storage, we have 2 40GB hard drives, both from Western Digital, the first drive being the WD400JD. This is a SATA 1 drive and will be used or is being used as our operating system hard drive, specifically for Windows XP 32-bit. This drive would have cost around $45 to $55 on average back in 2006. Our second drive is the WD400BB, which is an IDE drive. This drive would have cost around $30 to $50. Both drives operate at 7200 RPM. The SATA drive though has 8 megs of cache, where the IDE drive only has 2 megs. As for system RAM, being on a budget meant getting what you could at the best price. If that meant mixing brands, timings, frequencies and sizes, then that's what we did back then. The marketing push really for back then was the more system RAM the better, not really around things like RAM timings, brand matching and spec matching. For this very reason, we decided to go with 768 megs of DDR2 running at 533 MHz. We have one 512 meg stick from Samsung and one 256 meg stick from Apacer. This setup allowed us to run in dual channel up to the first 512 megs of RAM. As for the cost, the total for both sticks of RAM would have been around $50 to $60 back in 06. For the processor, we went with the Intel Celeron D352. It has a clock speed of 3.2 GHz with 512K of L2 cache. It has a TDP of 86 watts and features a frontside bus running at 533 MHz. The CPU launched at a price of $79 in May of 2006 and quickly dropped to around $50 by the end of that year. And finally, we have the graphics card, which is the GeForce 7200 GS from Nvidia. The model we went with came with 128 megs of DDR2 VRAM on a 64-bit memory bus. It has a core clock of 450 MHz with an effective memory clock of 667 MHz. It has a TDP of around 30 watts, but real-world usage is more around the 25 watt range. Back then it would have cost us around $40 to $50. So, as you can see, a rather budget gaming setup for mid to late 2006. Anyway, with this all out of the way, let's jump into the benchmarks, starting with the synthetic benchmarks. Moving on to gaming, starting with Grand Theft Auto San Andreas with the high preset and no anti-aliasing at 1280 by 1024, we came in with an average of 37, so definitely a playable frame rate, especially for back then. Moving to Fear Now from 2005 with medium and minimum settings with no anti-aliasing, starting at 1280 by 960, we got an average frame rate of 12 frames per second. At 480p it was definitely more playable at 53 frames per second. If you're willing though to mess with the settings a bit, the game is more than playable at 800 by 600 and 1024 by 768. Moving now to 2006, starting with Oblivion with the low preset with no anti-aliasing. At 720p we came in with an average frame rate of 16 frames per second, but dropping down to 720 by 480 we managed an average frame rate of 28. This game I would say is playable at that frame rate. It's not great, but I wouldn't say it's terrible either. Now looking at Crysis, the PC killer from 2007, we averaged an amazing frame rate of 9 frames with the low preset without anti-aliasing at 1024 by 768. No matter what resolution or settings I went with, this game was completely unplayable. Continuing with 2007, we're now taking a look at Stalker, Shadow of Chernobyl, with the low preset, no anti-aliasing and static lighting. At 1024 by 768, we managed an average frame rate of 26. I wouldn't say it was great, somewhat playable, but remember, back then 30 FPS was considered playable. Moving to 2008, starting with Dead Space with the low preset and no anti-aliasing. At 720p we averaged 10 frames per second, and even dropping to 480p we averaged 20 FPS, so even at 480p, definitely not a playable title on this system. Taking a look at Far Cry 2 now from 2008, starting with the low preset, no anti-aliasing. At 720p we average 6 FPS, that is right, 6. Single digits, not looking good, not looking good. Diving into 2009 now with Dragon Age Origins with the low preset and no anti-aliasing. At 720p we averaged, now double digits thank goodness, 15 frames per second. Still not playable though, on this system. Taking a look now at Operation Flashpoint Dragon Rising with the low preset and no anti-aliasing. At 720p we amazingly achieved a huge frame rate of 3 FPS. Not great, it seems like as the years move on it just gets worse and worse. Moving on to 2010, I can't say we're starting 2010 here with a bang, more like a squeak. Starting with Metro 2033. Low preset, no anti-aliasing, 720p, average FPS 2. So, this 2006 build, definitely a budget build. For 2006, it would have been perfectly adequate. I mean, it even played games like Oblivion. I mean, we got close to that 30 FPS mark, if you were willing to drop it down to 480p resolution-wise. Moving to 2007 though, you would have been in for a shock as multi-core CPUs sort of became the mainstream norm. But outside of that, I think it did alright. Not great, but alright. But again, it's a budget build. What were you expecting? Actually saying that though, I was expecting more from the CPU, especially that it was clocked at 3.2 GHz. But that net burst CPU architecture is garbage. Anyways,
In the next video, we'll be looking at the hardware, should I say, ecosystem for 2007 and putting together a 2007 budget build. So stay tuned for that because we're in for another wild ride.